It started with the front door. Hector Ruiz had been a firefighter for 14 years. He was not a man who second guessed exits. He had a practiced awareness of thresholds, which ones opened outward, which ones would hold in a flashover, which ones his crew could breach in under 8 seconds. He thought about doors the way other people thought about the weather, constantly and without conscious effort. So when his dog Peso blocked the front door on a Saturday morning, Hector's first thought was that something was wrong with Peso. The dog was a 5-year-old German Shepherd mix they had pulled from a county shelter 2 years prior. He was not aggressive, he was not territorial, he did not guard furniture or food or doorways. He had never, in 2 years, positioned his body between a family member and a threshold, with the particular rigidity he was showing now. Weight forward, head low, the stance of a working dog who had decided something. Hector's wife Daniela was holding their 18-month-old son Thomas on her hip, diaper bag over one shoulder. They were going to her mother's house. Saturday. Pancakes. A standing appointment. Move, Peso. Peso did not move. He nudged the dog with his knee. Peso stepped to the right and immediately returned to center. Daniela said, "Let me try." She moved toward the door with Tomas still on her hip, and Peso shifted left, blocking her path, and made a sound that Hector had never heard him make. Not a growl, not a bark, a low vocalization, somewhere between the two, that vibrated in the air of the hallway. They were going to be late. Hector was not a man who read dogs the way other people read dogs. He was a man who read structural integrity and heat signature and smoke behavior. But 14 years of emergencies had given him something adjacent to animal instinct, a practiced sensitivity to the gap between how things looked and how things were. Peso looked wrong. The hallway smelled fine. Nothing was on fire. He pulled out his phone and called his station. His shift captain answered on the second ring, and Hector described the behavior. And his captain said, "You carrying anything for CO?" He was. Every firefighter in his department kept a personal CO detector on their belt during off hours. It was department policy after a line of duty death 6 years prior. Hector unclipped the detector from the hook by the door where he hung it on shift changes. He activated it. The alarm sounded in 4 seconds. The reading was 87 parts per million. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The HVAC technician who responded 40 minutes later identified the source as a cracked heat exchanger in the furnace. A failure mode that had been developing for months, invisible to any inspection that didn't involve pressure testing. The crack was the width of a credit card. It had been venting combustion byproducts into the return air system in concentrations that accumulated overnight and had reached the threshold for symptom onset: headache, confusion, lethargy during the hours when Hector and Daniela were still asleep. They had been breathing 87 ppm CO for approximately 6 hours. The fire marshal's report noted that the level was not yet immediately dangerous for a healthy adult. He noted that it was above the OSHA 8-hour exposure limit. He noted that for an 18-month-old child, the symptom threshold is significantly lower than for an adult. He noted that if the family had left the house and returned 4 hours later to a house that had continued accumulating without ventilation, the reading upon return would have been above 200 ppm. His report did not mention the dog. Hector mentioned the dog. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The science of canine carbon monoxide detection is not fully mapped. Dogs have approximately 300 million olfactory receptors compared to humans, 6 million, and their capacity to detect trace quantities of gas compounds, including CO, at concentrations well below human perception threshold, is documented in occupational health literature, though not extensively studied in domestic settings. What is known, dogs show behavioral changes in response to CO exposure earlier than humans because their smaller body mass and higher respiratory rate means they process the compound faster. And because their olfactory sensitivity means they detect the associated combustion byproducts, the precursor compounds that accompany CO accumulation before the CO level itself becomes perceptible. Peso had been sleeping near the lowest floor vent in the hallway. He was the first to notice. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never ask for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The furnace was replaced. The house was aired for 48 hours. On the second day, Hector drove to the department and replaced the CO detector that hung by his door with a unit that had a digital readout and a wireless alarm connected to his phone. He installed three more, one in the nursery, one in the bedroom, one in the kitchen. Peso's bowl is in the hallway near the lowest vent. It has always been there. Hector has not moved it. He has thought about moving it. He has thought about what that morning would have looked like if Peso's bowl had been in the kitchen instead. He has thought about it the way he thinks about thresholds, constantly, and without being able to stop. Tomorrow, there is a story about an animal who stayed beside a child for 11 nights before anyone understood what he was waiting for.